Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Welcome everyone to Your Forever Home, the podcast, the Bathroom Design Essential Season. I'm really lucky today to have James Lambrou from Est Lighting with me today to talk about bathroom lighting. Now, before I do an intro on James, and I'm very lucky to have him here today, I just wanted to run through a little bit about bathroom lighting in general and why I really wanted to include this as part of the design essential season for bathrooms, because I feel it's an area that is often forgotten about, and lighting for me, and it's no surprise to James either, is so much more than downlights. And how many times I've lost count of how many times I see a lighting plan with, more often than not, 2 or 3 downlights in a bathroom, in every single bathroom. There's been no consideration for how to create functional lighting, aesthetic lighting, mood lighting, incorporating beautiful fittings so that it actually forms part of the design. And I think it's such a missed opportunity. Really, really important part of making your bathroom work for you, because there's nothing worse than trying to shave or do your makeup in the dark, which is what is going to happen if your lighting's not correct. So when I see these downlights on the plan, the thing that comes into my mind is glare and shadow, and this is going to be a nightmare for the users of the bathroom. So lighting, I feel, can make such a huge difference to the design of the space, both aesthetically, but it can also make the space work. And let's face it, if you are in the dark, and I talk about it in kitchens as well, it is really not then a well-designed space, because you can't use it as it's intended. And for those of you who listen to me and hear me a lot, you'll know that for me, functionality is absolutely critical to any design in any space. So we're going to dive into some core areas to consider when designing your bathroom in terms of lighting, and getting the lighting right is critical, and it will make or break it for you. Harsh, but true. Now, I'm going to introduce James, and then we're going to get stuck into this and hopefully have a little bit of fun. I told him we're allowed to have a little bit of fun. So just a little bit about James. So James Lambrou has spent more than 17 years working in the interior design and architecture faculty, both as a creative and design management. And a few years ago, James joined Est Lighting, the Est Lighting team in Melbourne. But Est Lighting are a leading specifier and supplier of local and world-leading lighting brands, and they're based in Melbourne and Sydney. Having fulfilled key roles in a handful of interior and architectural practices, including associate principal and practice decorator for a leading large Melbourne architectural firm, and then steering the success of a small interior design practice as practice director. And that's actually where I met James many, many moons ago. So in 2009, James commenced a more focused career path in lighting, a field of design that James has always been really passionate about. And I think anyone in lighting is really passionate about lighting, which is awesome. His client base is broad, and he's brought together from working with interior designers in Melbourne, including moi, and he now collaborates with some of Australia's leading designers in residential, workplace, hospitality, and hotel design. So welcome, James.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, as always. It's always lovely to see you and chat with you. So, you know, as you know me well enough, that everything's going to be quite direct. We want to be able to share lots of different things. And I think the first thing that I needed to impart for my listeners is that we're going to talk about artificial lighting, of course. And I don't think we can forget that natural lighting in a bathroom is the best lighting you can have. But of course, when we're getting up early in the morning and it's dark outside, and we're also, doing things at night, we obviously need to then create really good artificial lighting, because natural lighting is obviously not always around. But I do want listeners to also consider that your natural lighting in the bathroom is a core consideration. Your window placement, the size of your windows, and how your windows are going to be able to give you really good light is really important as well. But yes, today's podcast is really about the artificial lighting, which is why you're here, James. So I suppose the very first thing I want to chat about and ask you is, what do you think makes for really good bathroom lighting?
Well, it's a very broad question, but
It is a bit broad. Let's start broad and we'll get into the finicky detail.
It is great that you touched on natural light, because I think you can't eliminate that from the equation of good lighting if you have it. I noticed that there's quite a few homes who have the advantage and ability to incorporate natural light. I'm seeing a lot of skylights being used, and I think it's an important balance between natural light, if you have it, and artificial kind of lighting. But generally speaking, to answer the question for good bathroom lighting, I think it's a balance of three. I work with a balance of three different types of lighting. You need the functional element, which you need to then balance with that mood element. And also there's that real evening element that you need to consider as well. And by that, I mean using more detailed lighting that provides you just enough light to use the bathrooms in the evenings, in the later part of the evening. So you don't need to overly harsh that lighting to change, the mindset of your sleep pattern. So there are three general areas to do. And also I think it's important to look at fittings as well as bathroom lighting design as well, because the fittings that are selected narrate how they will be placed. So generally speaking, good bathroom lighting needs to balance shadow and mood, especially if it's a functional space. And I'm a big believer, if you can in any way, you need some direct lighting, which comes to light the face, because we all need practical lighting. Not everyone has the ability to use that, but the minimal cost of adding the electrics to be able to have lighting directly in front of you is hugely important. That can be decorative or a purely functional fitting. So, broad question, but I guess as we dive into it deeper, I think we'll probably answer it and wrap it up with, I think
we will. And I also wanted to add, you're talking about the functionality and being able to create mood. And I think for me as an interior designer, I find that the aesthetic of the light fitting, so particularly in powder rooms, but even if the room's large enough, because we'll get into IP ratings and so forth a bit later, but that it forms part of the interior design. You've got this stunning fitting, and I feel in powder rooms where that's the place where your guests are going to go to, it's so nice to have this beautiful fitting that is also creating mood lighting as well, and it's like guiding them to where they need to go.
It's a great opportunity to add personality as well.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that comes in, wall lights or pendants as well.
Yeah.
I think wall lighting, you need to consider your direct light and indirect light as well. By that, I mean lighting that has a diffuser that indirectly lights back onto a wall, which can be quite practical, but generally that will be more for mood lighting or to accent some textures on a wall. So there's that to consider as well when you're looking at wall lighting. Is the wall light indirect or is it direct? Direct lighting is more practical. It's a slightly different experience, but it gives you complete access to light to light your face, or if you're shaving or putting on makeup. So there's a balance of direct and indirect light to consider as well.
So let's chat about that then. When we're talking about lighting the face, and I mean, we don't necessarily want to wake up in the morning and look at ourselves in the morning, but we need to be able to put makeup on and to shave or whatever. And I know it's one of my core frustrations as a woman, wanting to put makeup on, and it's just so dark. So how do you then, what sort of lighting do you then, you're talking about direct light. So what are some of the solutions for creating direct light to light the face? I always consider light above, but not a down light, but a light that's actually going to, have light in front of you, and then also at the side. Is that there are considerations with that as well? They're the core two that I would go to.
Yeah, I guess, Francis, on the back of kind of projects I've more recent, being led by specifiers like yourself, who are looking for different ways to light. One thing I've really seen a move towards is a bit more custom joinery in lighting, so as a bathroom cabinet, as opposed to an off-the-shelf product, which can give you a light source or output. Often that light can be quite harsh, and I think there's a big gap in the market for beautifully designed off-the-shelf joinery cabinet lighting and cabinets. So I'm seeing a big move to more custom lighting, more custom joinery pieces with mirrors, and incorporating an LED diffuser within that, a small detail with a low glare diffuser, which by that I mean it's like an LED channel.
Yes.
So something with a milky lens, and you would and you would line that, to the right or left of directly to the face. That gives a beautiful amount of light that covers your face completely, and the whole area. So it's great for shaving it, and also on a dimmer, on a separate light switch, that could double up as some mood lighting. You would dim that down in the evening. So if you're limited, and also you don't want to overlight it, you don't want to have an LED channel within a joinery piece and perhaps a wall light. It's a lot going on for lighting. That could double up as a more evening mood light when you dim it down and you need to use the bathroom. So multi-purpose solution.
Yeah, that's two for the price of one, James. This is awesome.
Well, it could be three. Could be three for the price of one.
Yeah, I mean, but this is, it's really adding so much more than just your average downlight, which I know I'm going to keep referring back to.
Look, it's still quite practical. Whether it's the true aesthetic, it's very linear, it's very contemporary, but it's really practical and functional. And I think you need to balance, it'll be great to put a beautiful decorative wall light in a bathroom, but the slight compromise of that perhaps will be the quality of the light you're going to get for more functional. It's a real balancing act.
Okay.
We're noticing a real move towards custom joinery and incorporating lighting into those mirror cabinets as well, and there's some beautiful solutions.
So just so I've got this clear, and also for the listeners, are you talking about that LED channel going underneath or around, or sitting at top and then bouncing off the ceiling?
No, so that would be more of your mood lighting. It's not as practical as something having direct. So the idea would be is if you were facing a mirror and you had a joinery piece. Within the joinery piece, it would be it'll be vertical, so it'll be visible, but it'll be a considered small 8 to 14 mil width, which just gives you complete full frontal LED lighting with a low glare. It's not for everyone, but it is a really practical integrated solution as opposed to buying something off the shelf, which won't suit the aesthetic. But in this case, slightly more considered approach. The idea of placing LED below to wash your hands, what you see in hotels and restaurants and in many homes, or lighting above, it'll give you okay light for practicality, but it's more ambience and it's more mood, and it's beautiful. I would use that as my zone 2 sort of lighting. A beautiful touch. It's
layered lighting.
Yeah, I mean, I use that over downlights completely. I'm not, and we'll talk about the downlight idea. So, although I agree with you, it'd be good to challenge that concept. There is a need for downlights in some bathrooms as well.
Well, I mean, that is the next thing that we're going to talk about. But I just want to explore one other thing before we do, and that is, I personally really like having either cove lighting or an LED strip at the top of the cabinetry if it's not going to the ceiling, and where that actually bounces light off the ceiling and then into the space.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, some people find that lighting enough for functionality. And if you do that, it's worth considering your output. So you might want to increase the dimmers are key here. So you will want to increase your output of LED lumens that you would get out, which we won't go too much into, but the more wattage you can get on a dimmer means it gives you that control and flexibility to really pump up that LED and then in the evening, turn it down, instant, beautiful mood lighting.
Yeah, mood light. Yeah. I mean, I talk about that a lot in terms of the ability to, it's the layering of the lighting and having light purposes, but absolutely having the ability to be able to dial it up and dial it down. And I think that is where your fittings can actually give you a lot more than just one thing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the key. And that is where we're going to go now into downlights. I don't think downlights give you the ability on their own if they're used in isolation. Look, I say it a lot when I run the masterclasses that downlights are fine as long as they're not used as the sole light source in a space in conjunction with other lighting sources. I think they can work really well. I'm happy for you to challenge me, James.
I grin at that because I see it every day, and it's a constant conversation, especially between architects and designers as well. And look, and in all respect to any architects who are listening, I understand and appreciate why there's a place and position of placing a downlight directly over a basin. There are a lot of elements to, especially in multi-res, there's a lot of elements to consider. So duplicating a design very quickly. Look, putting a downlight over a basin serves a very good purpose. It lights the basin and the direct area that you're working on. The compromise of that is having a downlight above your head, is it will cast shadow down.
Exactly.
And so it'll make you feel like you've had a very busy night the night before, even if you've had a wonderful 8 hours sleep. There's a level of baggage that comes with it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, they go under your eyes, those baggage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eye baggage.
So look, there is a good reason. I challenge the system by saying in placement of downlights is when you place a downlight at a level quite behind you, although you're casting shadow, this is controversial. The shadow is even. It means you're getting an even shadow over your face, as opposed to a light in front of you, which will give you very much light and dark. So depending on your brow and all these areas, you'll have to turn your head up, which some people are happy to do, to get that blast of light and then put their head down. Me, I always go for a wall. Yeah.
Suppose it gets rid of the second time when you're looking up, but to be looking up in the. But look, I actually agree with you that if you're going to use a downlight, don't put it in front of the basin where you're going to get shadow. Put it behind you, but then have another light source, which is then going to blend that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the key. If you don't have that ability, putting a downlight sort of in front of you slightly may be your only option, because it's lighting the space, but it is also lighting your face if you were to sort of adjust where you're standing in front of the basin. Yeah. So look, there is a reason why they do exist. Downlights are getting better and better in their aesthetic. So that's something else to consider. Downlights are getting much smaller and they're less intrusive into a space. And there are some really beautiful trimless, literally the 38mm diameter, when they're clustered together, off-centered in a bathroom, can look really beautiful.
I agree.
I agree. Downlights have their pros and cons, but if it was something that was needed, and a lot of people still would be uncomfortable to eliminate many of them, if you don't have the choice of balancing other light around the space, just be wary on where you position it, and also what fitting you're going to use. Don't be stuck on where you're going to place the downlight without having selected what downlight you're going to use, because that also means beam angles. You might say, okay, right, well, I'm going to put it over the basin, but I'm going to really tighten up the beam angle from this particular fitting. It's not that bad. It means you're getting a real more sharper injection of light in a more narrowed direction. So that's another thing to consider.
And I think that's awesome advice. I think we could have actually this whole podcast, this whole episode just on downlights, but we're not going to do that to you listeners. We are going to talk about other things. But yeah. I think if covering off then just the different types of fittings, because now, not all downlights are equal. It's not only how they're made and where they're made and the lumens and the color and all that sort of stuff. If we just go from a base level, you've got the recessed ones, you've got the beam angle is so important. And I suppose the beam is saying how wide is the light? Is it going to be quite pin-headed so that it's very directional, or is it going to be broad so that you're getting as much light into that space? So if you want to cover off some of those things, when looking at downlights, you talk about trimless, but they're not all the same. And some of the fittings that you have at Est, the downlights, are beautiful, and we love them because they don't have glare. And you can actually look at them and not be blinded by the light. So just a couple of some of those things, James.
A couple of things on those. Yes, look, beam angles. If you have a fitting that allows you to control the beam angle, generally there would be fittings are available, not in adjustable. So you need to pre-select your beam angle. So with a particular S-Core product that we have 3 different beam angles, and it's just a matter of interchanging the lens, which we do when they're being made for the project. So it's a really important consideration. If you're placing a downlight as the main source of lighting, go for a wider beam angle. You need to, in a bathroom, there needs but if you're placing 2 together, sort of offside to a basin, tighten up the beam angle, ask for a tighter beam angle, more narrower, shall we say, beam angle. And placing two together just gives a bit of drama. It intensifies materials as well. Like say if you had a beautiful stone off center the light source of the downlight in this case, and really celebrate the beautiful stones that you're using as well. So, there are quite a few elements. I agree with you. I always look at how can we eliminate them or look at another solution before we settle back on the downlights as well.
Look, even in my own bathroom, I have got downlights in my shower, but the intent there was that they're really close to the wall and they actually then flood the wall with light and they're showing the texture of the tiles.
Yeah.
And I love the texture in my tiles. So I really wanted to highlight the texture. So they're actually, because we've got other light sources in the space, we don't really need them for lighting, but I really wanted to have them as, I really want to see my tiles today, the texture of my tiles. So I'm going to use that light.
Yeah, and a really good solution there, if we can and tell me if I'm deviating, but
deviate away. This is a fluid conversation, James.
If you have the opportunity and flexibility to remove any downlights from, you really don't want overhead lighting in the shower if you can avoid it. What I'm really moving towards with the projects I'm working on, even one that I'm working on with you, is to remove any downlights, and then within the cavity of a corner of a wall, have a recessed rebate and have an IP67 LED strip. That so you don't see any light feeding, but what you do see is the outcome of light, and that really celebrates the textures and materials and provides you enough light to shower in. You don't need bright lighting in a shower, but you need a good amount of light, but it doesn't need to be a source of, and also IP rated lights in the shower need to be highly IP, which means that you start to eliminate your choice, because there aren't many IP67 downlights out there. And they're hideous. They look really bad.
We were very restricted 6 years ago. So, and that's the other thing. Lighting has come so far in such a short period, and it's changing all the time.
Yeah. So, I think, from shower, I get excited whenever I see a shower that needs to be lit now. I pretty much, my go-to is firstly to be able to graze the side walls, which is also in the evenings. That has a practical element. In the evenings, you have that on, and it's a beautiful background glow, which will give you enough light to use the bathroom in the evening, or just the ambience of just, if it's an ensuite to a master bedroom, just to have that soft glow coming from your bathroom is a gorgeous touch. So that's a really good option to consider. Look, there is a construction cost to it, but if you have the ability to do that particular type of lighting design, which is not using downlights, really beautiful outcome.
It is. And I think just overall, actually, and I should have actually said this right at the start, that you can have the most incredibly specified home with really high-end materials, architecturally designed, and then an absolute, I'm going to say it, bog standard lighting plan. And you're
breaks my heart.
Sorry, is that rather harsh? However,
it breaks my heart.
It breaks my heart as well, because it's just so much expense, time, money, and effort is going into this incredible home, and the lighting is just so inferior. And yet you can have a home that is half the budget, half the spec in terms of the materials, and their lighting has been designed properly, and it will make it look $1 million. It is just
absolutely,
it makes or breaks the difference between a house that looks, oh my God, that is incredible, versus, oh yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I think it's a really important, and especially for your listeners and who, when it's the early stages of putting a design together, and from a budget point of view, I really believe of course you're going to enjoy the textures of a bathroom, of the tiles and the flooring and the walls, but if you don't use the right lighting, you're just missing an opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's like investing $10,000 in a piece of artwork and having no light next to it. You really want to focus your attention on your investment, and people spend money, and your clients will say the same, who spend money on tiles. You need to celebrate them. You want to have that opportunity. And that could be from below or from above. Uplighting bathrooms is another beautiful way to light bathrooms, and people often forget of lighting very low. It's beautiful to light low as opposed to the sides or above. If you can light from below, light a textured wall in the shower from below. Use an outdoor in-ground wall light and light from below. Beautiful way to lighter space.
Beautiful. So I think we've covered off our downlight elements, and we can use them. Just be mindful.
We've agreed to disagree, or we've agreed?
I think we agree. I think we're agreeing here, James, but I think we knew we were always going to agree. So then in terms of what other, I think you've touched on some of these already, but you might have some others that you'd like to share in terms of functional lighting solutions, because I'm so big on functionality. There's lots of things, as we were talking about, using dimmers, the ability to dial it up and dial it down. So a lot of the fittings can be used as both, but functionality is so core. And I think this, if the lighting's not right, the function of your bathroom is going to fail. So what are some of your other functional lighting options that you head to, that you suggest?
There are a couple of sort of off-the-shelf products. We work with a wonderful brand called XAL. They're an Austrian company. They've been around for many, many years. Beyond aesthetic and their more architectural element, they do really focus on the quality of their light. And they have a couple of great options off the shelf, simple surface-mounted strip lights. They have an aesthetic, but they're very pared back. Incorporating that into bathroom lighting on the side or in front of you is really important. Also, we're talking about recessed LED recessed LED strip light, so to speak, in the ceiling. That gives you a perfectly, as we were talking about, that light. Oh, it's almost a blade of light in front of you. That's a really beautiful solution. Yes, it's an aesthetic, but it's practical. It's where lighting is going. It's where bathroom lighting is going as well. Almost looks like there's a cut of natural light penetrating a room, especially when you don't have natural light. It's a nice way of mimicking natural light by providing even light across the whole room. So they're my real go-tos.
That solution, I feel, is so simple. It looks so simple. It looks so elegant as well. And I think you can use it in a lot of different design aesthetics.
Yeah, absolutely. And that fulfills a lot of elements of good bathroom design. I mean, we work with, as you know, Articolo as well, and they offer some beautiful decorative lighting that gives you a good warm blast of light, which it's slight compromise on the functionality, but for what you need the light for, you're getting such an aesthetic, such character into your bathrooms as well. So we do a lot of bathroom lighting of that range, and it's practical, but it's a true aesthetic, which is quite beautiful as well. They're my real go-tos in lighting. I think it's about position, and it's about where you place those lights, and then thinking about, is there an opportunity to put some personality into it as well?
Yeah, and that's where I like the fun part, which is the fitting.
Yeah, and it's your bathroom,
Yeah, that's
especially
right.
powder rooms as well.
Yeah, I think the powder room is, and our clients ask for it more and more. If we haven't already suggested it, is we want to have something a bit more special in the powder room, not only from a materials perspective, and we often go all out in the powder room. And I am actually going to have an entire episode just on powder rooms, because it's such an awesome opportunity to just go mad, just go outside your mold. And we have so many clients that embrace that. And again, the light fitting that you choose in those spaces can really add so much to the overall aesthetic of that space and how you feel in that space.
And positioning, I think, like we've touched on as well, it's I really challenge your listeners to look at a light plan and, push lighting to the peripheral.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to push lighting out to the side and create a bit of sort of background mood and drama. Yeah, you'll create some emphasis on the walls. But, there's nothing wrong with that. I think especially if the walls are tiled as well. People have a fear that if I don't light directly where I am, I'm not going to see any light. Well, that's not the truth.
No, it's not. And I think that is, that's great advice, but I think that's where having an expert and trusting that they know how this space is going to be able to be lit by using sides and not where you obviously think it needs to be. I could go into I could digress here completely and talk about cosmetic enhancements and how that is not direct either, and how that falls into a big hole. But it is what you think you need. You need to trust the experts to make sure that you are going to get the right light in the space, and it will just look amazing.
And your specifiers know the product as well, and I think it's very important. You need to know product if you truly know how to place it. the elements of that particular fitting really does influence how and where it goes in that space, bathrooms or anywhere else.
Well, they go hand in hand.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
Which is why, we work together as looking at the plan as well as what are the fittings that are going to go into that
Absolutely.
plan, how they join, that effectively, work together.
Yeah.
So in terms of then wet areas, because I have come across this both personally in my own builds, but also with clients a lot, you mentioned it earlier, the IP67, and there are particular regulations. They change all the time as well. So you need to
and if they change, they're unclear.
Yes, and also it depends on how those regulations are read and how your electrician or how your builder is going to read those regulations in terms of what you can do. So one of the ones that comes to mind is having a pendant light over the bath or having some sort of decorative lighting over the bath, whether it's centered or wherever it is. A lot of people like that aesthetic. But then also, as you mentioned earlier, having lights in an actual wet area like a shower. So just walk me through some of we talked about the IP67, when you'd need to use that particular rating and what's that rating mean versus some of the others. Be a little bit more technical, probably as technical as we're going to get, I think.
Yeah, look, it's a really important question. It's a time saver. It's a liability saver. It's a question we often look at. It is blurred, but it really shouldn't be. It is very clear. Some of it is down to the electrician's requirements and what they really want, but it's minimum IP44. So generally you have the two numbers, one's water, one's dust, one's water. So 44 pretty much means it's resilient to spray. So all bathroom fittings really should be, regardless of distance, should be IP44. And that will just, it's safety and ensures the integrity is lasted of that product. So we always recommend, if it's a very big bathroom and say a downlight is in the far corner of the room, 2 meters away from any running water, you can offer a non-IP rated, but it is the discretion of your installer to ensure that they do that, and also ensure that the drivers that are used are also IP. And that's very important, not just the fitting, it's to ensure that the driver that's being used is IP rated. And it's just safer to use an IP67, which is pretty much resilient. IP67 is one away from immersing a light into water. You don't need IP67 in a bathroom, but if you were going to introduce, and I highly recommend to your listeners to think about lighting from below, it's a beautiful way to light a shower or around a bath. They need to be IP67 because there will be water that will directly go onto the fitting. But generally IP44 is the minimum that you need, and it's around 60 centimeters from flowing water. So to be safe, if you were using a pendant and you had a basin, you need to ensure that where the water flows from the basin spout to the fitting is a minimum of 60 centimeters away. Yeah.
And I think that's where people get caught out, is that minimum requirement, that it's just not quite far enough away. So that's what I was talking about earlier, that you need to have the space, obviously, to be able to do that if you wanted a pendant. The pendants are really big with a lot of the clients that I'm working with at the moment. They really want to have a pendant, but then you need that space because it does need to be away from the water.
That's a real challenge. It's a frustrating challenge for us as designers as well, is that the moment you really start to listen, and we should, to IP rating regulations, is that it starts to limit what you can use in a bathroom. But then if you can't do that, remember, with any LED lighting below the basin or above, as we discussed, they all can be very easily IP rated to 67 because LED channels are available in different IP ratings. So that's a way around it as well. So, but as long as I think it's a rule of thumb, keep it 60 centimeters away at a minimum. Just bear in mind handheld showers as well, because the moment by regulations you include a handheld shower, it means that water can move from its direction. So a downlight has to be at least an IP54, I believe it is, no, IP55, which because you can actually direct the water. Yes. So just be wary of that as well.
And don't think your 3-year-old's not going to direct that water to the light either.
Exactly.
So that's why the regulation is there. And look, the electrician has to sign off on this. So he has to provide the electrical certificate. He has to say that he has signed this off as being a safe installation and a safe fitting. And there will be some electricians, and I know this from experience, that'll go, yeah, I'm fine with that. Others will go, it absolutely is white as the regulation. And the regulation is not that clear. I think it's open to interpretation, how you read it. So walk me through the pendant over the bath. IP67 or IP44? Because, gee, I've had debates about this.
Well, I believe you see them in photos, and sometimes I question. I see
you
them.
Do
quite a few European
photos a lot.
That chandelier looks great over a bath, but that looks like it's pretty much sitting in the bath, and I doubt that looks. So, look, it's important. It's important to, when you specify with intent that it will be signed off. But I generally, as long as it's 60 centimeters plus away from the flowing water, and if there is a handheld in your bath, there can be no fitting pendant hanging over your bath. It's just it'll be foolish for an electrician to sign that off. So my rule of thumb, if I was to put a pendant, is at least 60 centimeters. But ensure, if you can get an IP rating of some sort, it's challenging because not many decorative lights are IP rated. Just be wary. I think it's important to have a conversation with your electrician, but ensure that you have it suspended as far away of running water as you can.
And I mean, the other thing is, and look, this happened in my own home, that I actually got the pendant light that I wanted, that I was obsessed with. I actually got it converted to IP67 because the electrician wouldn't sign it off, and we did that. But also, I didn't want it too close for my kids to be able to stand in the bath and still touch that fitting. So even though it was meeting the regulation, and IP67 means it'll cut out, straight away, but I still didn't want them to be able to touch it. So, you want to be wary, and kids are going to push those boundaries. So.
Yeah. Oh, God, lucky kids have a pendant over their bath.
They are very lucky.
That's great.
It is quite hard.
Just be really wary on that, I think. It's a great look, but just it's have an open conversation with your supplier and your installer as well. And
I think that the thing that's leading people down the garden path of this is available is all the images that are available on Pinterest or wherever, and they're overseas, so their regulations might be different, or that bath may have been done before the regulations were really strict about the water, or, as you said, the illusion is that it's over the bath and it might not be really. So just because you see it in a photo, it doesn't mean it's possible.
Yes, sometimes it's just an inspiration.
That's exactly right.
It could be a render.
Photoshopped.
Yeah, it does baffle me.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I mean, this is also quite technical, and I don't want to go into all the realms of too much technical stuff, but in terms of cool and warm light, what do you suggest in a bathroom? Warm light or cool? You might want to just explain briefly what they are as well, the differences.
Well, I'm a 3000 Kelvin type of guy, which basically is an in-betweener. It gives you enough warmth and softness, but it's also a practicality to that colour temperature. The main go-tos are 2700 Kelvin, which you find with decorative lighting is 2700 Kelvin.
Which is warmer, which is the warm spectrum for our listeners.
Yeah, and 4000 Kelvin is more blue commercial light, to be used more, apologies, that was me.
That was quite loud.
To be used more, I guess more workplace settings. Yeah. But look, there are some clients who do prefer much cooler lighting in a bathroom. And I think that goes hand in hand with the materials that you're also using. Some concretes are beautiful with more of a blue sort of 4000 Kelvin. Just bear that in mind when you're choosing decorative with downlights, because a lot of decorative only comes in 2700. And the moment you have the vein of my life is when I walk past apartments with different color temperatures.
It's just awful.
And I'll free of charge. It's just bear that in mind. But 3000 is my go-to. But there is something to be said about 2700 Kelvin. It's a warmth output as well.
And I think that is a really good point about, I mean, okay, they're the color temperatures, but in terms of having that cool and the warm, and if they're not matching in a space, I think even if they're not matching in a home, I feel, oh my God, but in one room, if they're not the same, it is just, it is just such a bad clash. And people talk to, they ring me up and talk about clashing colors. and they talk about, I feel that it is a clash of tone. You've got your greys, which is your cools, and your warms, which is your beiges. And if they're not marrying up in a home, it just feels wrong. It looks wrong. But it's exactly the same with the light. If you've got cool and warm together, it is just, I don't know, it just feels wrong. It looks wrong. It's just so wrong. You just can't do it.
Yeah, and the only way, we agree. The only way that you can make that work, and it has got its purpose, if you are intending to switch them at different moments.
Yes.
As an example, if in the evening, you're just going to use your wall light, and you're just going to use maybe a low pin light in the ground or on the side of the wall, lowly installed, and they're all 2700 kelvins, you have them on a separate switch. So in the evening, you get that more candlelit warmth. But then during the day, your 3000 Kelvin or your separately switched ones are your more practical ones, provided you don't switch at the same time. There is good reason to use different color temperatures. The higher the 3000 Kelvin to 4000 will give you a lot more clarity, sharpness in the light. So provided that's considered, and even when you buy off-the-shelf lighting cabinets with lighting, just double check the color temperature.
Yeah.
Make sure that you match it with things that you're buying from another supplier.
I think that's a great point, actually, that, okay, I've just said, no, you can't have it. But I suppose I'm saying don't have them on at the same time. But if you do this is my day switch, this is my night switch.
Exactly.
What a beautiful combination you've got there. When you've got the 4000, you can look at every wrinkle on your face with great clarity. And then you've got your nice lighting. So I think that is there.
You don't switch them off together, because designers, the world will combust.
That's exactly right. So James, is there anything else that people need to consider to make really good bathroom lighting choices? I think we've covered a lot. I know we could keep talking forever, but what are some of the other things that you think listeners need to consider when making good bathroom lighting choices?
I guess maybe using it to sort of round up what we've discussed. I think switching is an important thing as well. And if you're switching a fan as well, it can be quite difficult, if impossible. Sometimes put a dimmer onto that. But it really is important to zone it zoning it less in IP rating. Zoning is more the impact that you want it to have from a functionality or decorative. Really consider everything: ceiling, walls, and ground. Look at the space in a three-dimensional idea, and like a holistic idea. Remember, start from. I would suggest to use this principle throughout your home. Start from lighting. People just think, lighting above. Yeah. To get your mindset working, reverse that. Start from lighting below and work up to get yourself. Otherwise, when you start from above, you will start to wash spaces out. I always start from below and then end with how I'm going to light it above. Because if you're going to maximize, does that make sense?
No, I think that's awesome. You've got to start.
It's my own technique. Because the moment you look from above, you'll probably start eliminating things from the sides because you've got enough light. Try to navigate your clients to start looking at it from low, from ground, from side, and then work your way up. And if you're lighting a space from the ground up and you've got enough light, well, then there's your answer for not needing as many downlights, because you're getting enough light elsewhere. Yeah. So I use that in bathrooms.
That's a fantastic piece of advice. And it is, it's so true though. Clients will come to us and say, I've picked my wall color. It's like, but nothing else has been decided. We need to start with the floor. It's the foundation for everything. And I think that is such perfect suggestion for lighting as well. It's a really good rule of thumb in space.
Yeah, it's a real good rule of thumb of mine to remind myself to think, excuse the pun, but out of the box.
Yes.
Because it does mean that you can, sometimes you'll be amazed at how little light you need from above when you've got enough light from the sides and below. But also in that as well, you've got to, the last layer of complexity of this is, the color of the room. How dark are the tiles? How textured are the walls? Because you may decide that you don't need any downlights, but like myself, you have very dark, almost black painted bathrooms. It will absorb light, so you will need to think about additional elements of lighting as well. So it's all, as we know, it all goes hand in hand.
So many things to consider. And I think lighting is such a complicated area, and that's why it just breaks my heart when I see a bog standard lighting plan come out, which is just the rule of thumb of how many downlights do we need in the space, yet we'll put them all in the middle of the ceiling. And, and it just completely ruins any design that's ever happened in that home. And it breaks my heart, as it does yours. I think that just after if people are listening to this conversation, they'll understand that there is so much complexity, not just in the placement, but also the light fitting itself, the colour, so many different things to consider, which is why it's so important to, get the right advice, I think.
Yeah, speak to your specifiers, and that goes with everything. Anything that there are a lot of things that interior decorators and designers need to think about. Lean on your suppliers; they know the product best. And then you use that to make your decision. They're there to give. You guys are the decision makers. We're here to fuel you with the knowledge to make that decision.
Fantastic. That's been such a fabulous knowledge that you've imparted today, James. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day today. I know you're such a busy man. It's always a delight to speak to you, but just
Likewise, Francis,
shared today has just been absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much. Now, where can people find Est? I will put your web address and everything in the show notes.
Right. I'll be delighted. And please, if any of your listeners want to make contact, please mention where you saw me and heard about it. It'll be lovely to know as well. You have some lovely natural light coming into that space at the moment.
I do, at the side.
It's God light.
Yes, my natural light. Not sure it's doing all the great things, but yes, lots of natural light.
So we're based here in Melbourne, in Richmond, for any of your Melbourne listeners, viewers. We're an appointment-only studio. It just means that we can maximise and really focus on your needs. So we're not really by all means, if you're in the area, pop in, say hello. But just to ensure you get the time, please call us and make an appointment. There's 3 of us here.
And where are you based in Sydney?
In Sydney, we're in Surrey Hills.
We're in Surrey Hills. Really good central locations. So
they're both wonderful spaces as well. We do a lot of entertaining and hosting here. So
fantastic. That's been wonderful. Thank you so much, James. It's been a fabulous chat with you today.
It's been a real privilege to be here. So thank you.
Oh, lovely. Thanks, James. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.